Hey there, Econ folks. This is Mr. Hooker, and this is video number 2 of economics models. All right, so here we are. We have the US and Brazil. Each one is making Dreamliners or large jets and small jets. So the US can make 30 large jets or 40 small jets. Brazil can make 10 large jets or 30 small jets. So let me explain the concept of absolute advantage really quick. Absolute advantage is the ability to produce a good using fewer resources than another economic unit. Comparative advantage, as you remember, is the ability to produce a good use at a lower opportunity cost than another economic unit. As you can see, the US has an absolute advantage in both large jets and small jets. There is just pure out an absolute advantage. Does that mean that the US should not trade with Brazil? No. So there's a reason to trade, and we're going to get into that right here. So let's look at this as we go. So currently, our consumption levels are the U.S. is consuming 18 large jets and 16 small jets. Brazil is consuming 8 large jets and 6 small jets. So everybody has a different opportunity cost. Right now, the opportunity cost for a small jet for the US is 3/4 of a large jet. And for Brazil, it's 1/3 of a large jet. And then for a large jet, basically it's just the reciprocal of that. It's 4/3 of a small jet. And for Brazil, it is 3 small jets. So you see here, the US actually has a a comparative advantage in producing large jets, but Brazil has a comparative advantage in producing small jets. So what we should do is allow Brazil to produce small jets, have the US produce large jets, and then each one specialized, produce the maximum number of small jets and large jets, and trade. So let's see how that works out for us. So without trade and production, the U.S. was consuming 18 large jets and 16 small jets, and Brazil was consuming 8 large, 6 small. Um, so and then they were producing that much and consuming that much. So with trade, the U.S. produced 30 large and no small, and Brazil produced 30 small with no large. And then we basically traded 2-to-1. So, Brazil traded 2 small jets for 1 large jet, and the U.S. consumed 20 small jets and 20 large jets, and the Brazil was getting 10 large jets and 10 small jets. Notice that the US gained 2 large jets and 4 small jets, and Brazil gained 2 large jets and 4 small jets. So, through specialization and trade, both countries got more and consumed more than by themselves. So, this is why we say that specialization in trade is like discovering a new technology. It basically moved their production possibilities frontier out. So this is where we are with the whole. We have a point outside of our PPFs with trade. So with trade, both countries produced outside of their own PPFs. So don't confuse absolute and comparative advantage. So just because the US could produce more of both goods doesn't mean we're better off without the trade. So you have to pay attention to those opportunity costs. So comparative advantage is the basis of trade. It's cheaper for Brazil to produce small jets than it is for the US. The US will want to import the small jets from Brazil. So that is your basis for trade. Don't get crazy about it. If Tazia has specializes in food, it can produce 1,000 units of food, 0 units of clothing. If it specializes in clothing, it can produce 500 clothing, zero food. So Urbania can produce either 500 units of food or 200 units of clothing. So who has the absolute advantage in the production of clothing? Um, and that would be Tazia. And who has the absolute advantage in the production of food? That would be Tejia too. So Tejia specializes in food. It's 1,500, and Urbania can produce 500 or 200. So when you're looking at that, Tejia has the comparative advantage in producing clothing, and Urbania has the comparative advantage in the production of food. So here's a good video from Clifford on figuring out comparative advantage. Tells you how to do that math really quick. If a country specializes according to its own comparative advantage and then trades with other nations, it would be consumed at a higher level than domestic production. All right, not gonna do that. We don't have partners right now. All right, the circular flow diagram. So this is an important one to understand, like how um, recessions happen. So trade takes the form of barter when people directly exchange goods, but really we use money. So very seldom do we actually barter. The circular flow diagram represents transactions basically in a circle. So we have two participants, the households and the firms. We have two markets, the product market and the resource market. And then we have four factors: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Okay. So you got households and firms there, top and bottom. Factor market, and that is where households sell their land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So if you're going to sell land, you're probably going through a realtor. If you're going to sell your labor, if you don't sell directly to the firm, a lot of people just go to the firms directly. But if you need help, you probably go to like an employment agency or something like that, a staffing agency, something like that. If you need help with capital, you're going to go to a bank. If you need help with entrepreneurship, you're going to go to a small business development center. And SCC has one. So we house one. So there's that. All of those are just facilitators. They don't do anything but facilitate transactions. Then you get that to the firm. Now, we don't do any of that for free. For your land, you are paid rent. For your labor, you are paid wages. For your capital, you are paid interest. For your entrepreneurship, you are paid profit. So then all of those factors go to the firms. Firms are transformational. They will take the factors and they will turn them into something useful. When they get them, they turn them into some goods and services, as you can see there, the blue line. Then they tend them to the market, the product market, what they're calling market for goods and services, also called product market. That's like Target, Walmart, Tractor Supply, Best Buy, whatever, Amazon, in the digital land. So all of those are the product market. Firms are great at making stuff, they suck at selling stuff. And so basically, where we are with that is that these folks will make it, the product market will sell it. So you go to the product market, you go to Walmart, Target, you go to buy certain things, end up buying stuff you didn't ever intend to buy it. Now, when you buy that stuff, You bought it. You didn't actually, they didn't give it to you. That is buying goods and services. Okay. And you're buying it with what we call consumer spending. This is the C in GDP. Okay. It is roughly 16, 17 trillion dollars a year. So that is the way that's going to work for us. It becomes revenue to the firm, and it is what the firm uses to pay your rent, wages, interest, and profit. So if consumer spending falls, that means that firms don't have as much money to pay rent, wages, interest, and profit. So they're not going to pay as much, and that means that incomes are going to fall for the for the households. Or if something else happens and the firms can't pay rent, wages, interest, and profit, household income falls and consumer spending will fall. And that means that the firms don't have as much money to pay that whole rent, wages, interest, and profit again. So there's this whole circular tie. Once you start dropping one side or the other side is going to drop. So you can see in this circular flow, you don't matter where you start, as soon as you start dropping one side, it's going to drop. So firms start selling goods and services that they produce to households and markets for goods and services. Firms buy the resources they need in the factor markets who got it from the households. That's land, labor, physical capital, human capital, um, and entrepreneurship. Human capital and entrepreneurship are somewhat tied. So human capital is just the knowledge and skills possessed. You taking this class is human capital. You are building knowledge and skills. So an economy's income distribution is the way in which total income is divided amongst the owners of the various factors of production. So that's not always fair. There's that argument now about the 99% versus the 1%. So income distribution is not always fair, and that can lead to some things. Think back to the French Revolution. So we have positive and normative economics. So positive economics is the branch of economic analysis that describes the way the economy actually works. These are facts. These are things that are verifiable. They don't have to be true. They just have to be verifiable. So you could say that the unemployment rate is 20%. That isn't what it is, but it's verifiable. You can go out and look up the unemployment rate and figure it out. We can say the inflation rate is 2%. You can figure it out. That it isn't 2%, but you can go find it. Um, Normative economics is a little bit different. It makes prescriptions about the way the economy should be. It's about what you want things to be, your opinion. It's like arguing with a 5-year-old. Um, you're never going to win. It's just a thing. So this is like, um, it's too cold in here. Um, the, you know, the color of the color of the classroom is, the color of the walls in the classroom are ugly. Uh, like they might be to you, but who knows how other people feel about it. The unemployment rate is too high. The inflation rate is too low. Those kinds of things. The Fed rate, um, the federal funds rate is too high. Those kinds of things. Usually it's followed by a policy response, but doesn't have to be. So positive economics is fact, it's descriptive. Normative economics is prescription, it's just opinion. It's just sort of telling you like a an opinion about something. You can agree with it, but just understand it's usually some kind of policy thing. Forecasts are simple predictions of the future. Um, Understand a ton of them are wrong. In that sense, economists are a lot like weathermen. We get paid to be wrong on a regular basis. If we're right 10% of the time, we're good. Um, so these statements, normative or positive, More than 60% of women are in the labor market. That is a positive statement. Rent control laws should be implemented because they help achieve equity or fairness in housing. That is a normative statement. Um, Society should take measures to end gun violence. That is also a normative statement. Uh, People who smoke pass on increased medical costs to the whole society. That is a positive statement. And single mothers are more than twice as likely as married mothers to be in poverty. That is also a positive statement. So that is the way that goes. So positive, normative, normative, positive, positive. All right. So the question on those is just whether or not it's a verifiable statistic or not. If it's not a verifiable statistic, it's normative. That's it. That's all you're asking for. So we're going to stop right here and I will pick this up in video number 3.